if it worked this time, I believe it should work again. So now let's look at what we would go with the shoulder. We treated the shoulder, we dinged both sides. Needles, again, I'm going to suggest is an extremely powerful tool. Perhaps you do not have access. You should. If you're just using needle instead of a hand, it's a different approach. If you can't use needles, you absolutely should be able to use your hands. And we saw a result. And then all of a sudden, we just saw what we saw, and we tried to develop a training approach. So you can go back to the old, I haven't studied this nonsense in a long time. The old ART for supraspinatus is reach a diagonal up, go back behind your back while you're digging here. And that was his pain. So the first jump point that if I have a choice to treat anterior shoulder pain with medial rotation extension, we'll treat the supraspinatus. And if it works, I don't even care if that was the only component, because remember that attic in those Philly row homes, they go all different directions. The cool part about supraspinatus is that there's so many different angles of fibers just given where the supraspinatus is in the supraspinatus fossa and how it moves around, because there's a number of different mechanical positions that we think should target the supraspinatus. So we're going to go lower trap and serratus with some crawling. A lower trap, you can do prone, you can do standing. It's like an M that you saw. It might have been the very last position in Blackburn's 1989. Everybody loves TYs and Ws, have no idea where they came from. They came from a study in 1989. It has nothing to do with rehab. It was just to see which rotator cuff had the highest EMG, completely irrelevant, with different shoulder positions. And it was only one arm lying prone. So that's the extrapolation to all your T's, Y's, and W's. So lower trap is kind of this, I call it an M. I don't know if you can see this while I'm not looking. So then we went to 4.5 month prone, and we ran our scapular stabilization through there, reaching, and then supraspinatus 1, 2, and 3. So there's an external rotation, an internal rotation, and then a seated external rotation. And that is the nomenclature I use, where the angles should be keen to kinesiology. And that's just a starting point to get 20 to 100 repetitions where you're not necessarily working on contractile strength, but certainly working on the connective tissue qualities of that particular area. And if you feel it up here, I'm going to suggest that we start approaching that as a tendon and a connective approach rather than a weak system that's simply mechanically weak because you have this muscle attaching to this more stiffer tendon that attaches to this really stiff bone. No different than how we look at hamstrings and calves, et cetera, et cetera. Heavy as you can. It's not going to be very heavy, like 1 pound, 2 pounds. 100% pain-free, minimum 20 to 100 reps. And we get a general connective approach through that. Some of the other approaches to specifically treat the tendon would probably be a little bit different and probably more long-range isometrics. But he gets on, I think he grabbed the robust 20 or 15 pound dumbbells, did a couple reps, and he's like, I absolutely feel my pec. And I'm like, awesome, man. We got things to do. And please, if you can't feel your pec tomorrow, everything will be fine. We know what to do. And then we can find whatever therapy you choose to access. Doesn't have to be the stuff that I did. As long as it gets you into these exercises, we have an N of 1 that they did something very, very good. Until that doesn't happen, there's no reason to change or deviate plan. And that was really exciting. And I'm certainly not in any way, shape, or form going to suggest that there was this only mechanical piece. It could have absolutely everything to do with just how things were interacted and what type of sensory motor experience we had. But again, we got to go off of something. Any suggestion like, oh, you could pick any exercise and they will work. Well, this is just how I picked any exercise. And if it's more for me, that's fine. But I'm still funneling that me into the benefit of this. And how would you're just gonna randomly pick a bunch of exercises? Why? What are you doing? Like, at least I have a reason for why I'm doing it, but I'm also going to be properly scientifically humble that these exercises are for a reason other than just random selection. So I do think that a proper fitness program that is, in this case, going to develop all forms of general work capacity. I think that would be very, very useful. I do think, just like in any case, blood work here, what would we be looking for? Certainly, right off the bat, cortisol and prolactin. These are, certain stress markers that I would see as I profile this individual and his presentation and his communication. I think you probably see this mysterious, normal high A1C, zero suggestion that it would have anything to do with being pre-diabetic. It does have to do with probably looking more at an RMR and using carbs as a rest. I'm finding that is a major, major marker, because if you're using glycolytic pathways at rest because of your particular degree of in shape, then remember, glycolytic pathways have byproducts, and those byproducts can wreak havoc through reactive oxygen species and through peroxidation of lipids. They are necessary for you to get that energy really, really fast. But if you're doing something like nothing, like NEAT, non-exercise related thermogenesis, NEAT, non-NEAT, and to use the fast pathways for something you don't need energy for a very, very long time, then probably fat, and that would be the sign of someone that has a requisite lower A1C. So those are some of the markers that I would expect to see. I wouldn't be shocked if C-reactive protein was higher than it should be, even though this individual has no pathological, bells ringing. And I said he recently had a physical. I said, be happy to look at the blood work for the purposes of linking it to what we're doing, because if this is already in play, how can blood work not be part of this? So I think there's some, obviously, other types of factors here that can help this individual, and we make sure that he gets to the right people to do that if they are, need to be collateral players on his team. So those were the things that I thought would be very, very useful here to discuss. But hey, this one was, in a way, is kind of easy. It's like pins come down, just knock them down. They put more pins down, you knock them down. Again, doesn't always work like that, but in this case it did.